Hi, I'm Greg Yellen with Reynolds, and this is Connected. We don't get to talk with internal folks, so people that work at Reynolds too often, but this one I'm excited about. I'm talking with Cory Coler. Cory is a supervisor on our product management team. He handles all of our fixed operations products. Cory's based out of Tampa, Florida, and I've been with Reynolds for 16 years, and I've been leaning on Cory to help me for 16 years. So I'm excited about this conversation. Cory, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So Cory, when I first started in the sales organization, I had a lot to learn, and I leaned on you a ton because of your background, before Reynolds, and also your expertise with still is one of our kind of linchpin product service price guides. But if you don't mind, maybe give a little background on you, kind of, what you did before Reynolds, which was a long time ago. Well, I shouldn't say a long time ago. That makes you sound old. It's a more than a little while ago.
It doesn't seem like that long ago. That's the funny part of it. It's fun because I get to go to like a lot of different events and things like that with Reynolds. And like a lot of people in the industry, I started parking cars at a Toyota store. I applied kind of off the street. And service manager said, "Yep, show up tomorrow. We'll put you to work." And so I showed up and started parking cars. I'm a very I like understanding how things work and the intricacies of it. And so I had some of the advisors that I worked with showed me how to work in this green screen program they had called Reynolds. And so like on the weekends when it would be just absolutely crazy and there's cars all the way out of the drive and stuff like that, I would hop in and kind of pinch hit to help write ROs so that we could get cars in the shop. And so the service manager caught wind of it. And he's like, "Hey, buddy, are you writing tickets?" And I'm like, "No, that would be bad, right?" And so he figured out that I had some opportunity to be able to kind of move and move me into an advisor role. And I was there for several years. One of the guys that I worked with was at Service Price Guides doing parts and labor lookup. Ray Hall. He gave me a call and he said, "Hey, they're hiring for some like consulting guys, and I think you'd be pretty good at it." And here almost 20 years later, he's probably not too far off. So,
no, you've been awesome at in that service price guides world, and you've grown too, obviously throughout our entire fixed ops organization. But talk a little bit about fixed ops and specifically service price guides, because our Tampa office has grown a lot. We just invested in a new facility down there not too long ago, which you're sitting in now, which is just a beautiful building. But that continues to grow as part of our business, and it continues to grow in the value that it's providing to dealers. So talk about that a little bit and how big of an impact it typically has.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the key differences is that we have a very painstaking process to kind of go through how all the data gets into the system. So at the office here in Tampa, we have a group of folks whose specialty is like going in and looking up in the electronic parts catalog and the labor guides and all of the kind of the technical reference information. What's required to do an operation. So we do a lot of the digging so that when the bullets are flying in the dealership, you don't have that same need because you can pull it up like at a moment's notice. And so I actually started with the group that does kind of the ongoing consulting. I did that for 8 years. And so it really let me see like some of the key differentiators, right? Like being able to get very quickly to whatever it is that you're trying to make an adjustment or an override for. It's incredibly flexible. So, we're able to kind of make it and mold it into whatever it needs to be for the store for pricing rules. And then it makes sure that everybody has kind of that same playbook for, how we're going to approach pricing and the rules and all the pieces that go along with it, while incorporating other things like variable labor rates and retail markup option and, a lot of the value producing components that we've built into our systems. So, the combination of service price guides kind of being at the center of it and then working in concert with a lot of the other solutions that are available really makes it kind of one of those linchpin products where, having it enables you to do so much throughout the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, 100%. And the facility down there has grown so much, and your responsibilities certainly as a whole, as a group in Tampa, but also yours personally have expanded. I see, obviously the GoMoto kiosk. I don't know how you can concentrate with that big old touchscreen behind you in your office, but obviously that's a big part of what you're doing down there too.
Yeah, for sure. So, on the product side of things, I moved into product in 2014. So, about 10 years there. And I started out with like service price guides, and then I also work with our scheduling components and some of our solutions around that, as well as some of our guest experience things. And so when GoMoto came along, I actually had an opportunity. Jason Sedaris, who's our vice president of product for Fixed, he and I were at a show and ran into Todd Marcel and Mike Murray from GoMoto, and we had the opportunity to like really early on see the product, right? And so being able to kind of come full circle, and when they came on board with the acquisition of GoMoto, being able to kind of work with them shoulder to shoulder and work on some of the products and the projects that we had. Was really an exciting opportunity, right? So GoMoto was one of those things where, it's helping kind of be that game changer for stores, whether that's, helping reduce the amount of time it takes to get checked in, whether it's expanding the hours through things like key drop and key return. It really kind of encompasses a lot of those things that we're starting to see as emerging trends within the needs of the automotive dealerships today. And so that's been really one of the exciting pieces. And then being able to incorporate some of the elements like styling changes where, it looks and feels a lot more like scheduler application, and being able to pull in service price guides pricing, is really some of the things that I'm really excited about, as well as some of the things that we have in the pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. I'll never forget. I really will. There's certain moments, in kind of life, but then professionally in your career that you always remember. And one of them that I think I'll always remember, I can honestly say, is, at that NADA that we acquired GoMoto, Todd and team kind of got up in front of the room. And we I don't know if this is true for everybody, but for us, at NADA, we get our entire team together, right? And we rally the troops for a couple of days before the show. We do some training. We do some fun having to usually, but it's just good to get everybody together. But anyhow, so we're in this big group, and we're in this room, and Todd and team get up in front of the group and kind of present GoMoto, and everybody in the room is just like, wow. And then it took about, 35 seconds, because there's a bunch of salespeople in the room, right? A bunch of salespeople, a bunch of product people, about 35 seconds. And then all of a sudden these light bulbs started going off, and all these questions start popping up. And what was supposed to be about a 7-minute, like, hey, welcome to the family, and this is what we do, turned into like this 90-minute session of Q&A, and does it do this? And can it do this? And can we make it do this? And just the amount of energy and excitement. It was one of those instant, wins that everybody just saw the value immediately.
Yeah, and having been there, right, like that is, and from a Reynolds perspective, it's the bluest you'll ever bleed, right? Like, it is really one of the cool opportunities to get everybody together. And there was such an interesting GoMoto, like out of the chute, that everybody was super excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to talk to you a little bit too, and we'll ease into it. But we did a study recently, and I wanted to get your read on it, mostly because of your background, and not because you were out necessarily doing the survey, but the information presented in the survey that we did for GoMoto was interesting. Some of it's validating, right, which is obvious, but also there's some pieces to it that's like, okay, well that aligns or that surprises. So really it looked at dealers and then also consumers, and kiosk usage and expectations in the service drive. So I don't know, maybe any highlights on that you want to call out first, and then maybe we can dig into a couple of pieces too.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting look at some of the challenges that the dealers face and that the consumers have kind of insight and opinion for. As an example, one of the things that really stood out for me was kind of that time it takes to be able to get checked in. And I think a lot of times we think we're doing great with it, right? And perception sometimes plays with your recollection of what that experience feels like.
Well, depending on which side of the interaction you're on.
Depending on which side of the interaction you're on, right? So, from a dealer's perspective, they're like, we're great. We're getting people in and out, and it's quick, and we're working as fast as we can. But a lot of times, to the consumer on the other side of it, you get a minute and a half, 2 minutes in, and now it's it feels like it's longer than that, right? Like if you've ever had to call someplace and be on hold for service, or you've been waiting. Like we're down in Florida, so we go to Disney all the time, right? When you're standing in that line, it feels a lot longer than what you thought it was going to be standing in that line. And I think a lot of times we fall into that trap a little bit, even in stores where we have really good processes. That the expectation from consumers has changed tremendously over the last 3 to 5 years. And the experiences that we have in other retail environments and in other service environments, right? We would go and stand 10 deep in line to be able to check our bags into the airline counter. And now I can walk up to any one of the kiosks that's there and literally, 30, 45 seconds, have my bag dropped and on my way to the gate. So, I think the expectation of consumers has changed considerably, but it also allows us to kind of temper some of those things where it feels like we're doing great, but we might be able to be benefiting from having some additional options.
Yeah. That example, the airport example, it's such a common one when you think about kiosks, right? But I like to go almost to the next level because it's some of the stuff that we're doing with GoMoto too, where you think about what the kiosk check-in was even just 5 years ago and what it is today. So when I fly American or whatever, right, 24 hours before my flight, I'm on that app, I'm checking in, I'm paying for my bag, everything's done. I get to the kiosk and literally all I do is hit my little 5-digit code and hit a button, and then it prints out my bag tag and I drop it off. So even those little efficiency gains, going from waiting in line to talk to somebody to a kiosk, but now to the kiosk essentially being ready for me, right, and greeting me, and you can scan a QR code or just use your little 5-digit confirmation code. But all that stuff's done, and I don't have to. I'm not in somebody else's way. And I don't know about you, but I swear I'm never late to the airport, but I'm not somebody that's there 2 hours early, right? I don't have an extra couple hours to kill, so it's always good to get through things efficiently.
Yeah, it depends on the flight, right? The earlier morning ones are sometimes a little bit harder to do, but yeah, it really is, and it also allows, like what we see in even a number of other places is like kind of reallocating the time that we spend during transactions, right? So it's not always just the fact that I'm reducing the amount of time. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer, right? Because you're going through, you're checking in for your flight, you're acknowledging of the luggage stuff, you're being offered, hey, do you want to upgrade to first class, like those kinds of things, right? And you just kind of do them as part of that process, but you're doing them at a time that's convenient for you to be able to do that, so that when it comes to crunch time, right, when you're trying to get through TSA and get to the other side, all the heavy lifting's already done, right? It's that kind of that final, here's the last piece, here's my bag, and ready to go. And I think we're seeing a lot of that where, between whether it's like mobile check-in or online check-in in advance, whether it's in-person check-in or self-checkout when it comes to retail, even with some like the gig economy types of things, right? You can have your dinner picked up on the way home. They can stop by Walgreens and, pick up some Excedrin if you got a headache, right? And it's still happening. It's not that you're not doing it. It's just you're sharing that load. So I think, time has become such an important and precious commodity in everybody's lives because there's so many things happening between, work and family and school and all the other things that are happening, that there's such a demand for time that anything that we can do to kind of maximize and get the most out of our day and the most out of our time becomes more beneficial.
Yeah. Well, and you also talked about just a minute ago, perception, right? And when you think about the amount of time that you have, right? If you have an hour, 10 minutes doesn't feel that painful. But if you have 15 minutes, 10 minutes is a big chunk of that, right? So regardless of whether it's taking more or less time is only part of the equation. It also matters, how big of a hurry you're in, right? How much time do you have, and what part of your day are you in, and
right.
How much value do you see in using this percentage of the time available on this activity. So there's a lot that goes into it, but no, good perspective. Anything else stand out to you, Cory, in that kind of report? And we'll link to this certainly so everybody can download it and look at it. It's not super long, but some good data in there. Anything else stand out to you?
I thought there were a number of really kind of key things. Like some of it was stuff that we already kind of knew, and it was some of that validation, right? That there's a lot of those things where I feel like as if I'm engaged in part of the process that I can get in and out faster. So it's some of the similar things that we see even like from DocuPad when we're going through the sales process. It feels faster. because we're engaged as part of that. But also being able to maybe offer some things that, we traditionally wouldn't. I can tell you that in the entire time that I was at Toyota, there were probably a handful of times I was like, hey, do you thinking about a new car? Right. Like, and usually it was just because, they'd just gotten an estimate for $3,000 on a car that was worth about two. Right. But
Right.
one of the things that we've seen be pretty successful is, being able to ask some of those questions, even just simply as part of the reception process. Hey, can we replace your wipers? Because usually they need to be replaced, but none of the OEMs have it in their schedules, right? They don't ever say that you should replace them, just inspect them. But here in Florida, we're probably about 6 months for a set of wipers, and then they need to be replaced. And so, some of those smaller items that we have the opportunity to be able to put out, but then also being able to circle back around and say, hey, would you like to see what your car's worth today? Right? There's a lot of people that might not go up to the sales department because they want to find out how much their car is worth. But if we said, hey, we can tell you what it's worth if you're interested, they would very likely come through, and we see a decent take rate in a lot of stores that sell a lot of cars. But I think that's really kind of one of the areas where it is kind of a differentiator, is being able to tie that back in, as well as being able to make sure that we get the right information. Because I think 80 some odd % of the dealerships that we surveyed said we always get the right customer information, right? But a lot of that happens, there's transposition errors. I'm trying to tell you verbally what my information is, versus me just being able to type it in, right? I'm in Excel a lot. I know that probably comes as a shock to you, but kind of doing the analysis. There's nothing that's quite as frustrating or mind numbing when you're watching like somebody else try to type. Especially in this new Zoom environment, right? Somebody's updating a spreadsheet and it's like they don't know all the shortcut keys and they don't know how to move around the things, and it's like it just feels longer, even though it's really not that much longer. But when you're engaged and you're doing it, it doesn't seem like it takes that long. And I think it's a very similar thing, right? GoMoto's one of the main things that it does is it prompts the customer for their contact information. Hey, how do you want us to touch base with you and let you know your car's ready? Or, if there's anything else that we need to ask you about. And we're getting it directly from the source, right? So there's less opportunity for some of that transposition. So I thought that was really, again, it was kind of the insightful thing. We do a decent job with it, but, could we be better? And I think in today's environment, we always have to be looking for those opportunities and those things that are, how can we be better?
Yeah. One of the ideas too that I want to toss around with you, because I think there's a lot of different perspectives on it, is, in the survey portion of the report for the consumers, I think it was the number 2 thing. It was one of the top 3, certainly, things that were important to them as to why they liked using a kiosk or why they liked using self-service tools, was this idea of no sales pressure. Right. And I think there's a lot of ways to look at this. So first of all, it surprised me that they're feeling pressure from a sales perspective in a service department. And maybe I'm looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. I don't know. But I mean, I feel like in general, service advisors do a pretty good job. There's a reason the person brought the car into the shop, right? There's something wrong with it. So yes, we want to educate them. We want to sell and we want to upsell, but I don't know. It surprised me that was something that was top of mind. So I want to dig into that, but also and we can go whichever way you want as far as direction to attack this. But you think about your advisors are generally pretty good salespeople, right? Your top performing advisors are going to be good salespeople. I don't necessarily want to take away that interaction from my advisor. Right? I want them to greet the customer. I want them to talk to the customer. They're some of the best at getting trust quickly, right? Like that interaction is so important. I don't want them to lose any portion of it. So I don't know. That's a lot right there. We can attack it any way you want to, but this idea of sales pressure and the sales interaction and service is one that I think is worth kind of beating around a little bit.
Yeah, and I think so. So on the first piece with the sales pressure, I think sometimes and I even think about advisors that I work with, right? Like we kind of get in those grooves, right? Where we're presenting always the same things, but it may not always be what necessarily best aligns with the customer. So being able to have kind of like just things that are basic recommendations, like not all the like crazy fancy stuff and things like that. But some of the simple things that just we know need to be done, like wipers are a great example. I I think that's one of those opportunities, and we're starting to see it in some of the parallel markets, like the independents and the aftermarkets. Guys that just did tires, 5 years ago or so, are now starting to offer wiper blades because there's margin in them. There, like it may not be a crazy thing, but it's an incremental amount that they're able to generate from service visits. But being able to have it where it's not like I don't feel pressured or obligated because, from a society standpoint, like when we're talking to somebody, we a lot of times we will take that offer of some additional service or of other things that are available for the vehicle, right, as some kind of an obligation. And now it feels like we're more adversarial, as opposed to when you go to a restaurant and you can see what's on the menu, right? I'm not trying to tell you got to buy everything on the menu. I'm just showing you the things that are available that you could pick from. And, maybe you want to have the steak or maybe you want to have the chicken, right? But you have kind of that path of choice of selection. So you're able to kind of choose those items that you want to. And I think that's really one of the key areas that it's beneficial. On the other side of it, right, and you made a really good point, GoMoto is not about replacing service advisors. Service advisors are a key component of the overall service process. They're like what makes everything hum. But it's one of those things where their time is in such demand just because, again, we're seeing across the country, challenges with staffing and trying to get and retain and keep qualified people in roles, whether it's in service, whether it's technicians, whether it's, even down to porters and parts counter people and all those things. Where we can take technology and implement it in to help maximize what people are able to do. I think that's going to be one of those areas where it's really beneficial. And we see that with AI, right? We're starting to incorporate artificial intelligence, not to replace people, but to help augment some of the things that they're doing or take some of the tasks off of them. And so frequently we go into stores a lot as part of the product research process, right? We're in dealerships. And one of the things that you often see is like people who are waiting to talk to a service advisor. And it's because their calendar of availability doesn't always line up with the advisor's calendar of availability. So you have kind of this chasm that gets created. And that's part of what leads to all those perspectives of, it took 20 minutes, even though it might not have. It might have been just the 10 minutes, but 10 minutes when you only have 15 seems like it's an awful lot, right? And so if I can get the basic information, right, even if it's just your name, phone number, what's wrong with your car, where can I reach you, are you going to be waiting here or dropping it off? And then getting it into the hands of an advisor and a technician, right? It's like going to the doctor. You get the vitals, the basic information that you need to have, and the doctor comes in, they kind of check everything out, they let you know what you need to do, right? Hey, you probably need to lose some weight. Great news, we're going to get you on this program and get you back on the right path. And it's a very similar, hey, we figured out that you have a CV boot that's torn, but don't worry about it. We have all the parts in stock. We can get it back, just like brand new for you, have it ready for you by 5. And so what we're able to do from that reception process is whether that's before or after hours, we can get that information from the consumer so that it is very clearly communicated to the advisor and ultimately the technician. But then we're also able to help, hit that handoff so that when it gets to the advisor can focus on the relationship piece. And, if there's upsells or add-ons or other things that we need to incorporate into that process, it frees up some of that time that they would just be getting the vitals to be able to have the meaningful discussion around what needs to be done on the vehicle and, what we need to do next to get everything back on the right track.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I want to double click on. First, I want to come back to, so I want to put a pin in before and after hours, because I think that's a very important thing that we should talk about. But before we get there, I want to dive into this doctor analogy a little bit, because I see the analogy and I don't disagree with it, but I think there are different perspectives and an argument that can be made where a doctor inherently has trust. Right, they inherently have credibility. You're going to them because you need fixed, right? And you're going to a car dealership because your car needs fixed. But I would present that, the credibility of a service advisor that you've never worked with and the credibility of your primary care physician are two different things. So how do you think about, with an advisor, if I'm an advisor and I sit here and I tell you, you know what? Yes, you could save me the 5 minutes of keying stuff in. That's annoying to me, and it does give us a line in the morning. But that 5 minutes is so worth it to me because that's my opportunity to connect. So my first interaction isn't selling, right? My first interaction is connecting. I don't know. How do you marry those two together? Because I do think that there's an argument there, at least.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely an argument for it. The other side to it is that, from a transparency perspective, we're able to incorporate a lot of other elements into that piece. So taking, your check-in, for example, once you've checked in, we send you the confirmation that we have what you want. And when we create the repair order from that, most systems, and ours included, we can send just kind of a conversational, hey, here's an update. We've got your repair order created. So it is more kind of that conversational versus a selling opportunity at the first time we talk to them. The other piece is as we start to look at and peel back some of the emerging trends and the continuing trends in service is the importance of video and incorporating videos as part of the inspection and as part of that transparency. Virtually all of the OEMs now have video programs where, they want the customer to get a video from the technician of their car and the inspection pieces, and if there's anything that needs attention. And so being able to try and get that vehicle into the shop sooner and into the technician sooner, and now having the ability to have that transparency where the technician starts at the license plate, says, hey, I'm your certified technician. We're going to be looking at your vehicle today. Great news. Your tires are great. Your brakes are great. You take great care of your car. We did notice that you have, there's a little bit of a leak that's starting to occur here. It's not anything you need to be overly worried about, but we'll let you know if you want to get it resolved. We really appreciate you being our customer, and we look forward to the next opportunity to serve you, right? Other things that we can do, even technology-wise, to incorporate into that process, help to drive, a lot of that consumer trust for the dealership, right? Being able to show that this is your car. And I'm not, we used to, when I was at the store, we would take customers into the shop, and you just can't do that anymore, right? Between liability and all the tools and all the air stuff, all the noise that's going on around and everything like that. And most customers are not even at the store, right? They've taken a loaner car, or they've taken the shuttle, or we've gotten, alternate transportation to someplace else. And so being able to bridge technology to wherever they're at. Right. And I think that's kind of the recurring theme is that, technology is an increasingly important piece of the overall service process, whether that's through the appointment scheduling on mobile devices, right? We've continued to see appointments climb, and particularly mobile devices climb, just like we see in retail transactions with, Walmart and Amazon and all the big players in retail. We continue to see, things like kiosks where, now we have the option to be able to do self-service, and we have the option to be able to kind of skip the line, right? I'm huge Dunkin' fan, so I will mobile order and walk past 5 people who are standing to wait to get their order and not feel bad at all, just because it's, I'm using the tools that are at my disposal to maximize my time. Tablets on the service drive, right? Being at the customer's vehicle where they're comfortable, being able to have discussions about their car and have that process kicked off digitally. Doing electronic multi-point inspection, so it's not like a greasy paper that you get back. Like I can tell you, I had plenty of times where I got a greasy paper with no information and just a line down the green side, right? Being able to capture all that kind of information digitally, and then, like I said, the communication tools that we have, whether that's sending a text message, say, hey, just want to let you know we're getting your car in, or hey, we completed your multi-point inspection and here's the results of it, all the way down to being able to do payments and then return things even if it's 2:00 in the morning, right? We've got it is a sensational time to be alive, because you can do a lot of those things that 10 years ago you absolutely wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, you're right. And you just mentioned text, and I do think that ties into, or at least for a lot of dealers that I've seen have some success with this kind of, I guess, blended model of digital and kind of in-person experience is really leaning into text message as a way to communicate early on and connect. It's pretty amazing the shift in consumer acceptance of a text message as a formal communication channel, right? Like it used to be, your text was for your family and friends, and that was about it. But now a stranger can text you as long as they introduce themselves. I experienced this yesterday, and a stranger can text you. They introduce themselves, say who they are, why they're texting you, right? And it doesn't have to be a giant book, but and you have this instant trust, connection, and credibility. So going back to advisors and selling and needing that time, I think, as long as you do it in an appropriate way, and you mentioned AI too, you can actually leverage some of that as long as it's tailored to the advisor and to the customer too. So it feels real and feels natural, where you can get that connection without ever sitting face to face or even seeing the person via video. Just a simple text message communication, right? Like 3 back and forth, you have that credibility. And then you call them and, hey, this is Cory. We were texting earlier. And as soon as you say that, it's no different than you standing in front of them and introducing yourself.
Yeah, it weaves that in, and now it's part of that. It's part of that overall blended experience of dealing with you, right? Like that's what ends up happening.
Yeah. So let's go back to before and after hours. And you mentioned 2 a.m. just a second ago too, but let's dig into that a little bit. So forever, I swear forever, there's never been a convenient time for a consumer, typically somebody who works 8 to 5 or so, to drop their car off and get to work, right? Or after work to work the full day, go pick up their kids, take them to soccer practice, get them home, get them fed, get them cleaned up, and then pick up their car. And it's not really fair to expect somebody in a dealership to work from 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. either, or midnight either. So how do you find that balance? And this is a place where I think I see a lot of traction gaining with GoMoto is before hours and after hours drop off and pick up. So talk a little bit about maybe what you've seen in dealerships and the traction you've seen gain there, because I want to dig into this a little bit.
So I will say it is a far cry from leaving the keys with the receptionist and hoping the customer got there before sales closed, right? I had more than my share of doing that when I was in the dealer, but it really is about being able to accommodate what the needs of the customer are, right? And a good example of that, like again, in stores all the time, one of my favorite things to do, and this will be a little quiz for you, is I go to the night drop box, right? Because everybody has it's a mailbox, or it's a cutout on a door, or it's the one that's bolted down. They always have envelopes. What's the one thing they're always missing?
Pencils, or let me take it another step further. So I'm gonna let you finish, but the one that I've experienced the most is it's pencils. They're little golf pencils, right? And luckily, usually they're sharpened, or maybe it's a pencil hanging on a string. But I swear it's always on a brick wall. So have you ever tried to write your name on a brick wall? It's like, no wonder they can't figure out what my phone number is, because I couldn't write it.
Yeah, they can't read the handwriting. Usually, more often than not, they're completely just missing, right? Like there's a chain from where there was probably a nice pen someday, or there's just nothing, right? It's just the envelope, and you're kind of on your own in order to be able to help convey. And so that's like one of the biggest pieces. Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest pieces is being able to communicate clearly. And I go back to an experience I had. I went to a store, I didn't have an appointment. They handed me one of the envelopes, like their night drop envelopes, and I put down what I wanted to have, and went and did what I was working on. And when I came back, they had done some extra stuff like that I didn't even ask for, and I'm like, who told you to do that? Right. And it's because things didn't get communicated clearly. Right. And I don't know if they couldn't read my handwriting, or if they just were like so in the motion, but it got lost in the translation somewhere along the line. So, I think probably one of the biggest areas is being able to make sure that things are clearly communicated, but B, that we've got, some capability and some capacity, to your point, without having to have somebody, that's standing there till 10 o'clock with, here's your key, right? Like the attendant that's there, just solely to be able to hand keys back. And the other piece is making sure that it gets back to the right person. So, right, that same, information that we capture up front to be able to know who you are and your email and your phone, that's the same method that we use to be able to give you the things to be able to get the keys back at the end of the cycle, right? So a customer can put their keys into one of the systems. They're securely held until an advisor comes along and moves the vehicle or porter or whomever. And then on the far side of it, whether that's an indoor experience like through one of the express units or the 365s that bolt into the concrete outside, we're able to facilitate that secure handoff to a customer regardless of what time it is. And it's still a consistent experience because it has all those same elements for making sure we have the right information and what services you're going to do and, all those things. And in the case like the 365, like those things are pretty stout. Like we've had one we actually have one that's in the College Station parking lot that I think they had up to like 150 or 160 degrees. And then on the other side of it, we had one of our first pilots was in Rochester, Minnesota, right? So you talk about getting pretty chilly. We would get some heartbeat reports from that device that let us know it got pretty cold. So. But it opens up a lot of those opportunities that we might not have had otherwise, right? Because going back to schedules don't always align. Somebody that's working, 12 hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. might completely miss the time that the dealership's open, and to be able to have that option really opens up some opportunities for stores to be able to meet what their customer need is.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. Well, Cory, I could talk to you for hours. We've spent plenty of time, on phone calls and in meetings and whatnot, and some stuff outside of work too. But we could definitely keep this conversation going. But I want to be respectful of your time. So before we hop off here, what haven't we talked about that's on your mind? Anything you want to dive into that we didn't have a chance to?
No, I think there's a lot that's happening right now just from an overall technology standpoint, right? And I kind of talked about it a little bit with, some of the emerging technologies around communications and around consumer interaction. But I really think those are going to be some transformative things that will continue to have an importance in our industry, right? And I think it's not just our industry, but especially our industry, right? Like we see it in a lot of the different similar market type areas. But I think the expectation of the consumer is that technology is an interwoven piece of what you should come to expect as part of the experience, right? Whether that's driving your car, and now we have 14-inch infotainment systems that are there, whether that's, the new iPhone drops in the fall and, now everybody has to have the new iPhone, right? The technology and the speed at which it is changing and adapting and growing is really, it's really cool to have seen a lot of it, right? To where we're at today, and the speed at which it's starting to increase even more, I think is going to be really one of those profound things over the years to come. So it's really exciting to be, kind of in the middle of some of the places where it is now, and see some of the places where the ship's going. Yeah,
no, that's great, and that's a great way to wrap. Cory, I definitely appreciate you taking time and chatting. We'll have to get together again soon. And now I try to stay out of Florida in the months of June, July, and August. So you'll have to come up to date and we can catch up a little bit more.
September too. September can get a little bit dicey. So yeah, but yeah, we'll definitely have to do it. Like I said, we really are fortunate. We've got 24,000 square feet that's right on the Hillsborough River. So I mean, our facility is really a second to none. It's a world-class facility, and the folks that work here, I can't say enough about, right? Like we support the service price guides, of course. We have a phenomenal team, and I can't give them enough accolades, but we've also got folks that work for the advanced service product that we have. So the multi-point inspection stuff and the consulting that happens beyond that. Recon Track is our vehicle reconditioning solution, and we've got consultants that are based out of the office here. Especially with the focus on trying to find and turn good inventory for pre-owned vehicles. That continues to be important, and we're not just on the fixed stuff. We have a couple of folks that work with some of our other groups. We've got Goobagoo and Add-on Auto folks that are in the building, Key Track. So we are multidisciplined here in the Tampa office, but it is certainly one of those things that's a really huge benefit, and one of the things that, being a Florida native, I'm somewhat used to the heat, although it still gets hot. But we've got a really nice space to have for associates here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. Well, Cory Coler, thank you so much for all your time. I definitely appreciate the conversation as always, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks.
Every time I come out of a conversation with Cory, I always feel smarter. He's helped me so many different occasions. I'm glad I got to share that conversation with you. Hopefully you got something out of it too. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. Make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.